This year, the world celebrates the first centenary of World War I. So in 1914, the nations of Europe fought against each other. Many people thought it was going to be a quick war and be all over by Christmas. Well, 4 years later, by 1918, nothing had been resolved. And so the world would go to war once again in 1939. So the war ended in 1945. So next year we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the end of World War II. Now, unfortunately, the ones who suffer the most when it comes to war are children. Now, World War II ended with the bombing of Japan. On August 6th, the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, August the 9th of Nagasaki. As I mentioned, the ones who suffer the most are children. Now, there's a little girl from Japan who was from Hiroshima, and she was 2 years old at the time of the bombing. Her name was Sadako Sasaki. And so every year subsequent to 1945, because her grandmother died during World War II, she would attend the peace gatherings to mark the end of World War II and also to pray for peace as a nation. Well, by the time she was 11 years old, like most 11-year-olds love to run and play. And when she was running one day, she got dizzy and fell. The doctors later diagnosed that she had leukemia, which among the Japanese was known as the atom bomb disease, because the many people who had suffered from leukemia as a result of the fallout of the atomic bombings. Now, like most 11-year-olds, they're pretty strong little kids, and with great hope. She knew that a lot of people who would suffer from leukemia could be cured. She'd heard of an old Japanese legend that said, if you fold 1,000 origami cranes, your wish will be granted. So that's what she began to do. However, she was progressively getting worse, and by the time she died, she'd only folded 656 origami cranes. Now, her friends wanted to help her out, so she was in fact buried with 1,000 because her friends folded the other cranes, and she was buried with 1,000. Later on, when the other children heard about Sadako's plight, what they did is raise the money to have a statue in her honor in Hiroshima. And the bottom of the statue, which had her with an origami crane, on the bottom it said, "From the children of Japan, this is our cry, this is our prayer for peace in the world." Well, you know, that little gesture of Sadako folding these origami cranes, realizing that the great wars are really precipitated by a lack of love. And so she made a small gesture to create something magic or something great, because you know what? We haven't had World War III, we have not had another atomic or nuclear bombing. So great things happen with small gestures. Sadako, no great wars, and the small gestures of the folding of the origami. And likewise with us, in the kingdom of heaven, great things happen and start out small. So Matthew 17, Jesus says, if you have the faith of a mustard seed, you can tell that mountain to move and it will move. So nothing will be impossible for you. So faith is really the essence of entering into relationship with God and also relationship with others. Last week's gospel encountered Peter, who wants to walk with Jesus on the water. He begins to walk, and however, he gets caught up in the storm and then begins to slip. And Jesus says to him, ultimately, you have little faith, why did you doubt? Well, it's because he lacked a little bit of faith. And another wonderful example of faith is in today's gospel, the Canaanite woman who goes to Jesus. Now, to kind of put into perspective is that the Canaanites hated the Jews, and the Jews hated the Canaanites, because we know that after the Israelites were wandering the desert for 40 years, they came into the land of Canaan, the promised land, with hundreds of thousands of people. And so they're the foreigners who go into the promised land and disturb the Canaanites. Therefore, there's always these clashes between the Canaanites and the Jews. So ironically, it is a Canaanite woman who goes to a foreigner, Jesus, to seek healing. And so she begins the dialogue by shouting. Jesus pays no attention to her. And then it progresses from that, from him ignoring her, and then ultimately saying, well, I came for the lost sheep of Israel. And then she says, Lord, help me. And she kneels beside him. And then when Jesus sees her gesture, he says to her, what is essentially not, is blessed should not be thrown to dogs. And then she wisely says, hey, but even the dogs eat from the scraps that fall from the table of the children. And Jesus, great is your faith. And instantly the woman's child was healed of the demonic torment. So great things happen and begin out small. And so this little gesture of this woman who is so in dire straits to have him that even she will use the term Lord, Son of David. And that only happens in 2 other occasions in Matthew's Gospel. And happens with 2 sets of blind men who cry out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. So she is so desperate. So a little bit of faith saves her. Another example of how great things for the kingdom of heaven start out small is the occasion of this angels on high. Now to kind of, again, put into perspective, 18 people of various fitness levels, of ages ranging from 17 to 68, climbing a mountain, and it took us 12 hours. We covered about 22 kilometers in the heat, and some people had sprains and various minor injuries. So how did they do it? And even before the climb itself, someone said, well, how are we going to do it? And the individual says, well, one step at a time. Well, 44,000 steps later, everybody got off the mountain safely. And I think as a result of the small steps which began this journey to form something great, is that the climbers have been able to raise $25,000 in pledges for Angels on High. So altogether, we raised $75,000 for the future church as a result of this Angels on High, which began with a small step of these climbers, and now it's formed something big. I think we ourselves can take inspiration from that. The great things of the kingdom of God start out small. If you look at the example of Sadako Sasaki, if you look at the example of the Kenite woman, and even of our 18 climbers, realizing, the great things we want to do in life always start out small. And this week we will have to go out, as we will hear at the end of Mass, go in peace, glorifying the Lord by your life. We'll have to glorify the Lord is a pretty great task. And how do we do it? Well, small steps, little small acts of kindness. And so this week, let's do the great things of the kingdom of God and help build it up. And find the inspiration of these groups, of that little Japanese girl who died of leukemia, the Kenite woman, and also the 18 climbers, to realize, hey, the great things in the kingdom of heaven start out small.